Get out of the victim mode, talk about the solution. When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I wanted the solution. I knew how to drink. I knew how to do all those things, but I needed an answer of how not to drink, how not to continue down this path. And when they told me the direction to do that, working these steps that had absolutely nothing to do with alcohol, had nothing to do with alcohol. One step talks about alcohol. The rest of it is like, what? This is going to help me?
Right.
See, I had to put that down and say, yes, I need to walk this path that feels so foreign. Like it's not gonna be, this isn't the right path. But you have to have faith that these people have walked before you and they recovered from this disease of alcoholism and codependency. And you have to believe and trust this path. And the sooner that you can buy into that and quit fighting it or arguing with it or saying it isn't going to work, just surrender and follow direction. We often say, do it for 90 days. And if it doesn't work, we'll refund your misery. You can go right back to all your stuff again. But what happens if you go 90 days and all of a sudden you find peace? You find a whole day that you don't think about that drunk. You find a whole day where you can concentrate on what's good for me. Because you just lose yourself. You have no idea where yourself is at anymore. Or what even you like. A lot of people I've talked to in Al-Anon, you ask them, well, what do you like to do? Well, I don't know. Let me call Bill, my husband, and see, what I like to do. Because they don't know. They don't have the answer. That's how much they lose of themselves. So they have to rediscover life.
Well, welcome everyone. This is our podcast here. We'll push each other to the top. We got Brent again. He's still on his vacation. I don't know. It seems like he's getting used to life over there.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I want to come home.
Yeah, you could do that. Let's do that. Yeah, and then let's talk about today. You want to talk about some guests and maybe some people you're helping and
let's I'm really excited because we've got some people lined up to be guests on the podcast. And one of the things that I kind of wanted to go over with these guests is the fact that we all come from different places. Alcoholism and drug addiction, it doesn't care if you've got money or you don't have money or where you live or where you work or wife or no wife. It's just it just really crosses every line. And it's not particular about who it grabs a hold of. And I believe that everybody's story is a little bit different. I want to keep talking about that because one of the things that addiction does is it makes you feel like you're so unique, like you're the only one in the world that feels the way you feel and are going through the stuff you're going through. And, I got myself into this. I can get myself out. That thought goes through your head all the time. I don't need to ask for help. That's probably one of the hardest things I had to do when I finally drank enough and became miserable enough that I had to reach out for help. And once I did that, it just felt like the floodgates opened. It just felt like it became so easy at that point to take some direction and to open up. I've talked about my stubbornness and how I dealt with all that. But I just want to tell the people out there in podcast land that we all feel that way, and none of us want to ask for help. But like I've said many times before, it takes is two of us. And so the guests that we've got coming up, I've sponsored one of the guys that we'll probably have up next, and he's got a really unique story, and I'm really excited about that. somewhat similar to my story, but but different challenges. We all have different challenges. So I'm looking forward to Chaz coming on and talking about his recovery and the path that he took and and what it took for him to give up, to surrender. I think is so important. Recovery starts when we finally surrender, we give up, and we quit fighting everybody and everything. And we learn to start going with the flow and quit swimming upstream and just go with the river, just go with the stream, just go downstream and just let things happen. Uh, and I just think that as we get into some of these stories, that you're gonna hear how each and every one of those people got to a place where they had to surrender.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of the key to this is, I had to drink a lot of alcohol and do a lot of dumb stuff before I got to that point where I just threw in the towel and knew
Mhm.
that I was beat and I couldn't do it alone anymore. I had to have some kind of help. I certainly didn't want that to be a spiritual uh, answer. I that was the last thing in the world I wanted to hear is, yeah, you gotta turn to God. It's like, no, anything but that. But and as
Yeah.
and we talk about, it doesn't have to be my higher power or Jonathan's higher power. It can be whatever you decide is your higher power and whatever you tap into. And that was very attractive to me. I didn't want anybody telling me what I should believe in. I
Mhm.
wanted to discover that journey by myself, and I did that.
Mhm.
Uh, One thing that I think I forgot to mention in a couple of these episodes, and I want to make sure that people understand that we are not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous at all. This has nothing to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. This is just my personal journey and some of the people that Jonathan and I have invited into this deal to share their recovery and their journey through this. And the whole idea, of course, and is to be able to connect with people out there that are still suffering. There's so many of us out there that go through each and every day in a tremendous amount of pain and a place where they just don't have any answers and they don't have any hope. Yeah, that's how I felt when I got here. Is I didn't have any hope, and so when I tapped into people in this community, this recovery community, I got a tremendous amount of hope right off the bat because, the people that helped me along the way, they didn't try to pull the wool over my eyes. They didn't try any fast tricks. I think when we hear honesty, we recognize it.
Mhm.
When it touches our soul, when it really, really touches who we are,
Mhm.
and that's what I heard when I first got here is people talked from their heart. Um, I remember Randy, my very first sponsor. He I had to go to court one day, and my big resentment in the whole world was going to be there in the courtroom. And I told Randy that I had to go to this hearing, and I was really concerned that I was going to do something stupid. I was going to lose my mind, and I didn't know how I'd react. I mean, I was just barely sober. I had no idea what was going to happen when I came face to face with this resentment, and I didn't trust myself. So I told Randy exactly how I was feeling. And I'll never forget, Randy says, okay, no problem. When is it? And I says, well, tomorrow, which was in the middle of the week. And he says, okay, no problem. I'll meet you at the courthouse. And I'm like, what? You're going to do what? He says, oh no, I'll just meet you there and we'll walk through
Mhm.
this together.
Wow.
And I thought, well, I can't afford to pay you for your wages. He was an engineer at the time. And it was like, I can't afford to pay. He said, no, dude, we don't take payment. I go there to help you because when I help you, I help myself. And it was like, I
Mm.
just couldn't wrap my head around how
Mm.
people can freely give of themselves. He
Mhm.
was going to take a day off work
Wow.
and he
Yeah.
show up for me, who was pretty much a stranger to him. He didn't know me very well, but now that I'm down the road many, 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 many years, I can totally understand exactly what he was doing.
Mm.
That's how this thing works. And so, I was afraid that I'd be indebted to him. And the
Mm.
truth of the matter is, you just give it back. You just pass it on. You just keep going. You know. That brings up another story. I was in a situation where I wasn't working, and I was uh, we had bills to pay, and it was a scary time. And I remember this guy in the program. He happened to be a priest. He walked up to me one day and he handed me an envelope, and I opened it up after I left. It was at a meeting, and after I left, I opened that envelope up, and there was $100 bill in there. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but at the time and that many years ago, it was a lot of money. And it was just like unbelievable, that somebody would just hand me that with no expectations, wanting nothing in return, you know. And I think eventually, after I thanked him 1,000 times, for doing that for me, he said something to the effect that, you know, pay it forward.
Mm.
And so, I've had opportunities to do that. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, that's how this community works. We push each other to the top. We make sure that, you know, we're not indebted to anybody. Everything that we do for other people, and like I've said before, I get more out of this than you do, and so that's what happened to me in the beginning. A lot of people reached out and helped me, and wanted absolutely nothing in return. And that was, that just felt so good. I've never had people really care enough to go way out of their way. Uh, and you often hear, we don't, we put a, we put a hand out to people. We don't give them a handout. We don't give them handouts. We give them a hand up. We help them along the way.
Mhm.
So I think that's really, really important, that you kind of get over that feeling of thinking that you're putting people out, because you're just not. You're helping them. So
That's so cool. Yeah, it reminds me of a couple of things in my life too, where, you know, people just did kind things. That $100 bill, that was I got married really young. Melanie and I she was 17, I was barely 18. No, I don't think I was even 18 yet. No, I think I was 17. So we got married in her parents' front room, and Bishop was there. Bishop Duncan, I remember. He was so nervous. He'd never done this before. And right before this little ceremony, he sat me down, and he just and he told me, I could just tell that he didn't know what to tell me. He didn't know what to say. He was just so like, "You're so young, you don't know anything," which was all true. And he handed me $100 bill. And
yeah,
he's like, "I know this isn't a lot, but in the '90s, that was a lot."
yeah, that was a lot.
And I'll never forget that. And I don't know, I guess I felt like he really did care, you know.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
honest love, I guess, that's so powerful. I've never forgotten that. I've never forgotten his kindness to me, and he was so concerned about us. And years later, we were able to see him, and said, "Hey, we're still together all of these years later." But I love that you talk about that. Like, it's not always a thing to have people just share and do things for you without any expectation of payment or whatever it is, right?
yeah. Super uncomfortable for me.
Hmm.
It was something that, if I hadn't have got to the depths of the disease of alcoholism, it would, I don't think I would have ever got to the place where I could accept any of that.
Hmm.
What
Is that the surrender that you think? Is that the
Well,
moment?
it's a gift. I think it's a gift of desperation is
Yeah.
what what it is. It's just a gift that you get because you're so desperate to change your life or change the direction of, how you're living and where you're going
Hmm.
that yeah, that surrender comes with that desperation. And
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. It's not an easy place. I really think that it takes that for people to get long-term sobriety.
Hmm.
And this is just my opinion. I'm about to give one of those, take it with a grain of salt. You can have a different opinion, but my opinion is, if people that are going to have long-term sobriety, there's some really, there's some big areas of commonality, that seems like we all have. And one of them is the gift of desperation.
Hmm.
It's like everybody that I've talked to that has 20 plus years, I talk to them about their story, and a lot of them will tell me, "Oh yeah, I got to a place where I just had to give up. Absolutely. I'd gotten sober before, I'd relapsed over and over and over again, but finally got to that place where I knew that my life had to change and I was willing to do whatever, and that's a common thing that you hear all the time.
Hmm.
Uh, Nowadays, I think people get into, you know, I think young parents panic sometimes when their oldest child hits 16 years old and they find out that, he's been smoking pot and drinking on the weekends with his friends and everything. I think they freak out, throw him into treatment,
Hmm.
thinking that, I'm going to prevent this drinking problem right off the bat and this and that. I've heard a lot of stories about that. And I've heard stories saying, well, yeah, my parents threw me into a treatment center when I was 16. Oh my gosh, I had the best connections when I left that place.
A little
I found
backfire there.
I didn't know that, you could do this drug or that drug or put this combination together and make this work and blah blah blah. Oh, it's so educational. It's like,
Whoops.
oh, that was a mistake.
That was not the intent. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But there's every story is just a little bit different. You just never ever know what you're going to get, and so I think I think you find out that every individual has their own path, and a lot of people in the program they'll talk about I'm a high bottom drunk or I'm a low bottom drunk. Oh, I'm a real low bottom drunk. Blah blah blah. I've never bought into that scenario. I've never believed in high bottoms or low bottoms and trust me when I tell you this, they talk about this all the time. I was a high bottom drunk, I didn't lose anything. I didn't lose my job. I didn't lose my family.
Mm.
Well, you still get to that place inside where your soul dies.
Hmm.
I don't care. I don't care what your circumstances are.
Hmm.
The insides are what really tell the tale.
Hmm.
And whether you have stuff or no stuff, it has nothing to do with what dies inside of you and
Hmm.
gives you that gift of desperation. I think that's a vital part of uh, getting in recovery. I was talking to you earlier. I got a phone call just a little while ago, a couple 3 4 days ago, and was able to help the young gal who married to an alcoholic who'd gone through treatment, very successful, got out of treatment, got right into meetings, got a sponsor, was doing all the right things. They went on a vacation and he relapsed. And, she's lost and has no idea what to do. And I spent hours with her on the telephone and walked through that with her. And it's, you would think after all these years of recovery that I've got behind me, I would have just these definite answers. You do this, 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 and this, and everything's going to be fine. But the truth of the matter is, man, alcoholism and drug addiction's cunning, baffling, and powerful. And every scenario is a little bit different.
Hmm.
Uh, I try really, really hard when I talk to people is not to tell them what to do. I tell them that they have to make that decision. I can tell them what I would do in that circumstance, but I'm not there to tell you, you got to do this, this. I'd never, ever, ever do that. It's
Mm,
their decision what they have to do. Because, and like I told her, I said, there's no easy solutions. This is a horrible, horrible disease. And the stuff that we have to do to overcome it are difficult. They're not easy. It's not easy to separate yourself from your loved one. It's not easy to have, uh, when you go to family uh, meetings in treatment centers, they talk a lot about setting boundaries. Well, you got to set these boundaries. Oh my God, I think that's the dumbest statement in the world. Set these boundaries because it's easy to say, well, if Johnny does this, I'm not gonna do this anymore. I'm not gonna do that anymore. I'm not, I'm gonna set this boundary. Well, Johnny knows how to twist and turn things and hit your heartstrings and hit you. Uh, they just know how to manipulate really, 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 really well.
mhm,
And pretty soon those boundaries meld away. And what do you end up with?
mm,
You end up with a bunch of guilt and shame because I didn't hold up to these boundaries. You know, I tell people there's one thing you got to do when you tell an alcoholic that you're living with that, if you drink again, you are out of the house. And
mm,
I've done this. I've lived with people where I told them, I says, yes, I've got an extra bedroom. You can rent it from me, but I have one rule. If you do drugs or alcohol in my house, you leave. And they'll, oh, okay, fine. They don't take it very serious. And I've actually had to kick people out of my house and tell great friends, really, really dear, and I love them dearly. I'd do anything for them. I don't have anywhere to go. I'm going to be on this. Well, I'm sorry. You made that choice. You know, you
mm,
made that choice to pick up that drink. You made that choice to pick up that drug. I'm not going to sit here and enable that. I
mhm.
told you that that's what I was going to do. So I think it's very important that when we do set a boundary, that we absolutely 100% follow through with it. Because if you cave and you give in one more time, it's just, here we go on this merry-go-round. So
Mhm,
I think
mhm.
it's really, really important that
Yeah,
even though I don't like boundaries, that if you make them,
you got to do it.
you got to do it.
Yeah, you'll do anything because you love them, including keep your side of the boundary enforced.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know. Yeah, man, that sounds so hard. So how do you do that? Like, how do you what kind of counsel did you give um this lady? Like, I mean, I know you didn't tell her what to do, but I'm sure there's some things that you did tell her that maybe that might help her.
Well, one of the things that I think it's that people really need to hear is, you can just imagine this young gal. She's married to this guy. They've had three kids together. They're in love. They love each other. She cares dearly for him. And all she sees now is an animal, really. I mean, does not tell the truth, does nothing but point fingers and blame everybody and everything for his problems. He
Mm,
doesn't take responsibility for nothing.
mm,
And I think it's important that people out there that are dealing with this understand you have to separate the disease from the person.
mhm,
Two different things. The person that you love and care about and you enjoy being around and all that is this person. And now the one on drugs and alcohol is this person. And you have to separate the two. And you realize once they put any substance in their body whatsoever, they're no longer this good person. They're no longer your loved one. You don't know who they are. They're a stranger as far as you're concerned.
mhm,
So you have to look at it. And I think it's easier to deal with boundaries or it's easier to deal uh, with yourself if you can just separate those two and understand there's the disease part and then there's the person that you love and care about part.
mm,
And so I told her first off that she needs to separate that. Hate the disease, but you don't have to hate the person. You can love that person.
Hmm.
but you can hate the disease.
Hmm.
And I think that if you can wrap your head around that concept, it makes it a little bit easier to take care of yourself. The one thing, an alcoholic, an Al and I are codependent. Uh, in that situation, they lose who they are.
Hmm.
I asked her the question. I said, "When's the last time you did anything good for you?" And
Hmm.
she just started bawling.
Hmm.
She couldn't remember.
Hmm.
All she thinks about is him 24/7. What's he doing? Where's he been? What's he going to do? What's going to happen in the future? What's going to happen now? And what's he going to tell me this time? And what's going to be my fault? And blah, 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 blah. And she's being held hostage. The
Hmm.
whole family's being held hostage.
Hmm.
And the only way that you can get out of that is you stop.
Hmm.
Don't do anything.
Hmm.
Just stop reacting,
Hmm.
start taking care of yourself, and concentrate on, how do I feel right now?
Hmm.
How do I feel? She couldn't even answer that question. She
Hmm.
knew how he felt.
Wow.
He'd been telling her every day
Yeah.
that that he feels like crap and it's all her fault.
So
But
she's kind of been sucked into the disease too, right? Like the
yes,
family members get their,
her
I mean,
her addiction is him.
right, right,
His addiction is drugs and alcohol.
right, right.
So what she needs to do is start taking care of her and get away from her addiction and stop buying into all that.
Yeah, wow.
And so you need to learn how to talk, not taking, not buying into their blame game.
Hmm.
You have to put an end to that. Every time she would make a statement to him, he would turn that around and put it on her.
Hmm.
You know, well, if you didn't complain so much, or you didn't do this, or you didn't do that, I wouldn't get so upset. And then I have to go drink and blah, blah, blah. It's all their fault. And so I think one of the most important things to do when you're talking to somebody that's in uh, in the middle of their disease is you talk about your feelings. Nobody can argue if I start my statement out with, "I feel like this." When you use and do drugs, it really hurts me. I feel so bad inside. You
Hmm.
can't argue with somebody that has a feeling. Well, you don't feel that way. No, I do. I feel like, when you put me through this, or when, and that's not a good statement, but when you do these things,
Hmm.
that I feel really confused and I feel like I'm a hostage. I mean, you got to get brutally honest. You have to evaluate what's going on in the family. They have three children and her, and everybody in the family tippy toes around him. Everybody. He's holding them all hostage.
Hmm.
He's like a puppet master, and he can get everybody to jump and to do things and manipulate and change and work it. And the only way that stops is if you stop it.
Hmm.
Once you dance a different dance, you keep dancing the same old dance, you're going to keep getting the same results.
Yeah.
And once you say, "I've had enough, I don't want to dance this dance anymore. I do not want to buy into your crap." If you want to go drink and drug, that's your decision. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm powerless over that. I'm going to take care of me. I'm going to go work the 12 steps myself.
I was gonna say that sounds like step one.
Yeah, it's her step one, to start realizing that number one is she has to take care of herself. And that is such a big deal for people in that situation. They just have no clue what to do when they have a loved one, and they don't realize how powerful the disease is, because it affects them. It affects them the same way that it affects the alcoholic. Low self-esteem, low self-worth, uh, don't get any sleep, don't all they do is worry and toss and turn, and they think about nothing but that person.
Hmm.
And to break all those cycles is very difficult. And I told her, I said, let's just let's just make a plan. Today, you're going to do one good thing for you. One thing, just one thing for you, something positive,
Hmm.
whether that's going and getting a massage, spend a half hour meditating, talk to a counselor about you, not him.
Mm-hmm.
Don't talk about him. Talk about how you feel,
Mm-hmm.
and just do one little thing positive for you. And if you do that every day, just like the alcoholic, you start making progress, and you get your power back. She had given all of her power away to him.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I always talk about the serenity ball. It's like, here, take my serenity ball. And they just go out and abuse the crap out of that serenity. They bounce it off the walls, throw it out in the street, they kick it, they do all these things. Don't give it away. Take responsibility for your happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Don't expect anybody out there to give you happiness,
Mm-hmm.
because whatever their path is going to be, it is going to be, and you're absolutely powerless over that. There's nothing, you cannot control him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you didn't cause it, you can't cure it, and you can't control it. The three C's of Al-Anon.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to remember that you are absolutely powerless over this disease. So you have to go out there and start taking care of yourself, to start getting back into pray for yourself, concentrate on what you can do good for you today, how you can recover from this, because you've got a big part in it. She might have enabled him for years and years and years and years. And it becomes a big habit, a big merry-go-round, you know, and he knows every little button to push. Trust me, he knows every button and if there isn't a button to push, he will install one and then push it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's cunning, baffling, and powerful.
Wow. Yeah. That seems like, I guess, almost sounds almost overwhelming. Like, where to even start. And I think that's a great idea, is to start just with one little thing for yourself. I
Yeah,
think I
yeah,
think I think I would hope that those individuals in that situation can do that, to give themselves some peace for even just 30 minutes, right? Uh,
right,
but I guess it's like, got to eat this elephant, right? Like, you don't think about the whole thing. You just think about that one little thing that you can do. And that seems manageable, I guess. That seems like attainable, right? Like it's something you can,
right.
yeah.
And
Yeah. Wow.
they take responsibility for that behavior. They take responsibility for that alcoholic. I mean, they don't want to reach out and talk to anybody. They don't want the world to know that their family's got this huge problem. They're embarrassed. They're ashamed. You know, they're, how it is. Your mind just goes 9,000 miles an hour. And unfortunately, I think when it comes to codependency, your natural feelings, or your natural way of taking care of this issue, is exactly what you should not do.
Right.
So it's so important to reach out and talk to somebody that has gone down this path, that
Mhm.
can give you that little tiny bit of hope. And you're absolutely right, Jonathan, when you said it's just overwhelming, because it is. And it's like I told her, I said, what I'm going to tell you to do is not easy.
Mhm.
There is no easy answers to any of this. It's
Mhm.
going to become very uncomfortable.
Mhm.
It's going to take a lot of courage and a lot of strength. I mean, can you imagine him coming through the door, and he's drinking, and he starts throwing all this crap at her, saying it's all her fault, and she's going to suddenly do something she's never done before. This is how I feel, starts the conversation.
Mhm.
Wow, that takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength. It just takes a tremendous amount of courage to be able to take that first step and to change it, whether it's that scenario or any other scenario where you can just do things different for the first time,
Right.
and break that cycle. Because once it's the same old dance, he knows that dance so well.
Mhm.
He knows that dance 1,000 times better than she will ever know the dance.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's how the family starts to heal, is they start to dance a different dance.
Hmm.
Start taking care of yourself.
And that different dance sounds like even a different personality. Like you're changing the way that you're interacting with others and how you think and take care of yourself. That to me sounds like a whole different person, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's right, but
But you have to tap into something that you've never tapped in before. You
right.
know, your brain's always telling you, well, I can't say this or I can't say that because if I say this, it's going to piss him off. It's going to say that, it's not going to be right.
Hmm.
So you're overthinking every little thing that's going on.
Hmm.
And when you stop that and just say, okay, this is how I feel, then you can start a conversation where you don't have to worry about how they take it or what they're going to do with it, or is it going to hurt them or protect them or piss them off or whatever, It's
Hmm.
just like, I'm going to talk about me for the first time.
Hmm.
You go out and drink and you do these things, and you don't come home for 3 or 4 days, you know, do you know I call every hospital in town looking for you? Do you know I call the jail? Do you have any idea how agonizing I feel when I make these phone calls, how difficult it is for me to every day worry. I'm tired of worrying. I'm tired. I'm just wore out. I can't do this anymore. I think the honesty is so important. Start out with your feelings and then tap into, because I tell you, being on the other side of that, the flip side of that, being the alcoholic, I remember when people told me what effect I had on them. I
Hmm.
remember it hit me to the core when somebody would say, when you do these behaviors, it really hurts me. So I could hear that.
Hmm.
But being an alcoholic, when somebody pointed their finger at me and said, you do this one more time and you do that, and, they just start lecturing and coming at you, a wall goes up, and it's, you might as well, you might as well just save your breath, because I don't hear a thing. I don't hear one little thing.
Hmm.
But when you start talking about yourself and how you feel and what it does to you and things like that, not that it's important that the alcoholic hears it, but it's not like you're going to change, that's not going to be the one thing that changes them forever.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
But
you'll
they
get
hear
it
it.
on. But the dance changes. Now
Yeah.
you're saying things that
Hmm.
that the dance now stops, and you're on a different path,
Hmm.
you know? And the whole idea of a codependent is to take care of themselves, to really, really focus on them and how they can recover from this addiction, which is the alcoholic, and how you can start living your life, you know. Like I remember one time hearing a story like every Al-Anon, they have torn, ragged underwear because they haven't even bought their own, they just quit taking
Right.
care of themselves. They
Right.
just don't. They're worried so much about the other person that they don't even focus on, going out and buying a new pair of underwear, for heaven's sakes.
Wow.
So they just lose themselves
Yeah.
to that depth. So I think it's important that you just find a place where you can make a little bit of progress and talk to people, find a good professional counselor. Uh, she told me, she talked to me about the treatment center that he went through. They had a family program, which was sounded to me like it was just horrible. I mean,
I don't know.
they told her how to prepare for relapse and relapse prevention, and like it was her responsibility or something. It's like, what? It's not her responsibility. Her responsibility is to get well herself, to get away from the effects of alcoholism in her body, in
Hmm.
her mind. Just, at
That's
least when you're the alcoholic and you relapse, you're drinking a substance that just makes all the cares and the worries in the world go away.
Mhm.
Here's this poor Al-Anon sitting there, this poor codependent feeling every intense feeling there is and gets absolutely no relief whatsoever.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
her only relief is to let the alcoholic have it with both barrels when she sees him or how she feels. She's got to release some of that anger.
Yeah. So how do you identify a good family program? Like, is it just go to Al-Anon or what's the?
Al-Anon is the place I would definitely start. There's some really good books out there now. There's a book, an old book that's been around it's by Melody Beattie. Codependent No More is the name of it. And that book, it was written when you started hearing the phrase codependency a
Mhm.
lot. Um, so she kind of goes in that book. She identifies what codependency is.
Mhm.
She kind of goes through the phases of what codependency really is. So it's nice to get in touch with that knowledge to know. Now, I've read that book and I've read several others. But from what I understand, talking to some Al-Anons, I hear that there's some really good literature out there available now that
Mhm.
talks more about the codependency. Now, Al-Anon has their own big book. I think it's called How It Works, and that's a good guide through the steps.
Mhm.
They have a book called Blueprint to Progress, which actually walks you through the steps, and
Mhm.
you do that with your sponsor, and it's kind of questions and answers kind of thing.
Mhm.
uh, but a good program to identify is number one, they talk about you. They don't talk about the alcoholic. You go to somebody and they start talking about the alcoholic and what you can do to prevent them from drinking or using or don't get them upset or what, walk away. It's a
Mhm.
waste of time. I think one of the best programs is okay, what can we do to help you? Okay, he's holding you hostage now. What can we do to get you out from under that? You know? How do you break those binds? How do you get out of being, totally controlled every second of the day?
Mhm.
Because trust me when I tell you this, these people don't get a break. Their mind works 24/7 on that problem. And they don't get a break.
Mhm.
So got to give themselves permission to start focusing on themselves and not the problem.
Mhm.
Start focusing on the solution
Mhm.
and not the problem. You're never going to figure out the problem. You're never, ever going to find the answers. You're never going to understand it. It seems like if you put enough energy into it that you'll figure it out.
Mhm.
But I'm here to tell you that's a waste of time.
Mhm.
Don't try to figure out why. Try to figure out how I can get out from under this and what can I do for me to make me feel like a good person.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that seems so hard, right? Like, I think there's, when I have that kind of, and I haven't experienced this, and so I can only relate to what I can from my own life. But yeah, my mind is looking for the why and the what and how can I do this and what's this going to look like in a year, in a month, and hoping, I can imagine some of that is happening to a family member, just constantly searching for those answers, right? And
Right.
and I guess the answer is not intuitive, right? It's the opposite. It's like
Yeah.
stop doing
Yeah, it
this
is.
pattern, and now you got to take care of you and get a sponsor, start working the steps in Al-Anon, and that's the path for you. That's
Yes.
that's the
Yeah.
program. Um, is that where am I headed the right?
Yeah, and it's the opposite of what you feel like you should be doing.
Right.
It's absolutely,
Yeah.
and when people go to Al-Anon, I tell people all the time, go to 12 meetings before you make a decision. Don't go to one meeting and say, "Oh, that was a terrible meeting. I'm never going." Those people don't know what they're talking about, blah blah blah.
Mhm.
Don't do that. Go. And if you go to one and it was a real bad meeting, there's Al-Anon meetings all over, just like there are AA meetings.
Mhm.
And you can go find a group that I always, when I go to an Al-Anon meeting, and if they're not talking about the solution, then I need to find a different meeting. I need to talk about the solution. I don't need to talk. I know the problem. They know the problem. I know the problem. We all know the problem. We got the problem down, you
Check.
know,
Okay, now
and
what?
yeah, check. And you can sit there and complain and moan and groan and be a victim
Mm,
because I don't believe victims get healthy. I just think if you don't get out of the victim mode and take responsibility for getting well yourself, then
mm,
you're stuck.
mm,
Get out of the victim mode, talk about the solution.
mm,
When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I wanted the solution.
mm,
I knew how to drink. I knew how to do all those things, but I needed an answer of how not to drink,
mm,
how not to continue down this path.
mm,
And when they told me the direction to do that, working these steps that had absolutely nothing to do with alcohol, had nothing to do with alcohol. One step talks about alcohol. The rest of it is like, what? This is going to help me?
right.
See, I had to put that down and say, yes, I need to walk this path that feels so foreign.
Mm,
Like it's not gonna be, this isn't the right path, but you have to have faith that these people have walked before you
mm,
and they've recovered from this disease of
mm,
alcoholism and codependency. And you have to believe and trust this path. And the sooner that you can buy into that and quit fighting it or arguing with it or saying it isn't going to work, just surrender and follow direction. We often say, do it for 90 days. And if it doesn't work, we'll refund your misery. You can go right back to do all your stuff again.
mm,
But what happens if you go 90 days and all of a sudden you find peace?
mm. Is that what?
You find a whole day that you don't think about that drunk. You
Yeah,
find a whole day where you can concentrate on what's good for me
yeah.
because you just lose yourself. You have no idea where yourself is at anymore or what even you like. A lot of people I've talked to in Al Anon, you ask them, well, what do you like to do? Well, I don't know. Let me call Bill, my husband, and see, what I like to do because they don't know. They don't have the answer.
Wow.
That's how much they lose of themselves. So they have to rediscover life, really,
Mm,
rediscover what makes them happy and rediscover, and by going through these steps, these powerful, powerful steps, all that becomes available to them.
mm,
So much hope.
mm,
But I think in codependency, it's a very, very difficult step one.
mm,
And until you can admit you're powerless over alcohol and your life had become unmanageable, it's a it's a hard, hard, hard thing to do to get to that place. Because we don't want to give up power. We love these individuals. We know that we're the answer for them, you know? And trust me when I tell you this, I've seen codependents love their alcoholic to death.
mm, mm,
Never ever gave up. Always enabled, always picked up the pieces, always made sure that they were taken care of, always, softened the blow, Every time they went to jail, they bailed them out of jail or they got them the best lawyer or, you know, they don't know. Alcoholics don't know how to do things for themselves. They've got everybody doing it for them.
mm,
For every drunk, there's at least one real good codependent out there helping them along.
mm.
And you talk to them and they don't recognize it. They think it's love.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that they don't know anything else to do, right? Oh, well, my loved ones needs bail money, so I'm gonna go bail them out.
I don't want them to be in jail.
Yeah, like who wants how that I'm not a good family member if I had just leave them sitting there.
But leave them there, walk away.
Yeah,
What does that make me?
yeah. They don't know another. I wouldn't know another answer. I wouldn't know what to do. Um, and that's a hard, it's a hard, hard place to be.
Well, I think it's important that you realize that you don't save them from their own pain.
Mm,
Let them feel the pain.
mhm,
Let them feel the pain. The pain is what gets them to a place where they're willing to give up.
mm,
Until you know, I was out there running and gunning until I ended up, Elaine kicked me out of the house. I ended up in a borrowed pickup truck. I was all by myself, nobody to blame. I
mhm,
had created this, and it was the first time in my life I took responsibility for what my life I made of my life,
mm,
and so I went through a tremendous amount of pain, and nobody saved me anymore. Everybody was done picking up the pieces.
mhm.
That's probably what saved my life. You
Right.
know, if I'd have had one more person out there
Mhm.
loving me, I might not be here today.
It's so
So
wild. That's just, it's so, like I said, unintuitive, right? It's not what looks like the right course.
it's not. It's so backwards. It's
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
just it's so difficult. Like you say, your loved one calls you from jail and you say, hang up the phone. They get one phone call.
Yeah.
Well, they I don't know how many they get nowadays, but they
Yeah.
yeah, never forget my mother hanging up the phone on me when I was in jail one time.
Ooh.
I had one phone call and she hung up the phone and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I
Okay.
am here. I'm not getting out this time." Oh, that was an ugly feeling, but
Oh, yeah. No
it,
kidding. That's wild. Yeah. And it looks as though from this side of that these two paths are very parallel. Like there's a lot of similarities that are happening. Um, and it has to, both of these individuals, or as many as I guess is involved, including other family members, really have to have a different outlook on life almost. It seems like giving them the tools and the permission and and some good help along the way, of course, some others that have been there, like you said, to help guide them through is so critical. Yeah.
and then you think, there's another thing you need to take into put into perspective is how many Al-Anons or codependents does every alcoholic have?
Right.
Is it one or is it 10? It's at least probably three. So for every alcoholic, and they say that the average is 1 out of 10 people are addicted to something.
Mm.
So, you got 100 people, 10 are addicted to something, and how many codependents out of that 10, So you got 30.
Multiples. Yeah.
And so there's this disease is
Touches a lot of people.
it's a lot of people it affects, and a lot of people out there that really don't have solutions to this. I love working with families. You know, this podcast is a catalyst for us to reach out there and touch people. And I'm not here to say that I have all the answers. I'm not a professional. I didn't go to college to get these things. My experience, I had 20 years in Al-Anon. I grew up in an alcoholic home. Um, all of this stuff that I've learned is just by trial and error. I've I've walked through a lot of this stuff with people. I've walked through a lot of this stuff with myself. I've done the Al-Anon steps. I've had an Al-Anon sponsor before. It's there's a I have some experience in that, but this is a way that we have a way that you can reach out to us. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody. I love helping families. I really enjoy that. I Not that I enjoy the scenario, but I like to give people hope, and I just think there's so many tools out there today that people, you kind of put yourself through the scenario of you've got a loved one that suddenly becomes addicted to whatever, heroin, cocaine, alcohol, whatever, fill in the blank. And what do you do?
Hmm.
Where do you go? Where do you start? And it's so sad to me that as many people that are out there suffering today that run into that scenario, And unfortunately, I believe that a lot of the treatment centers that are out there are, out for the mighty dollar. I don't know that what their intentions are. Um, I find that a real good program is hard to find.
Hmm.
I don't, it's readily available. I, I'll tell you a quick story really fast before we end this.
Mhm.
I was, I got hired at this company, and the owner of the company, I knew he hired me because he was in the recovery community, right? And so we knew each other, and he had an opening at this business that he owned, and I got to know his business partner really, really well. Went to work for him, worked for a long, long time. Well, all of a sudden, this guy that owns this company, he goes on a bender
Mm.
and he's off the rails. I mean, this guy was like holed up in a hotel room. Whole room was covered in vodka bottles. I mean, this guy was just off the rail. So his partner calls me and says, Brent, we need to help him. What can we do? I said, okay, let's get him into, let's get him into a treatment center. First, we got to detox him, and then we'll get him into a treatment center, blah, blah, blah. And so this guy had a lot of money, right? And we're giving him these scenarios. What do you want to do? We're here to help you. We're going to put you into detox. Then what? Well, I want to go to it was what's his name? It's a rock and roll star. He has a treatment center down in the Bahamas.
Mm.
I can't remember his name. It'll come to me later. But anyway, he was like, I want to go to this treatment center down in the Bahamas, and so I'm sitting in the lobby of this hotel, and I'm on the phone, and I'm calling these people on the phone, setting up a bed for him at a treatment center in the Bahamas. And all of a sudden it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, no, no, he is not going to the Bahamas for recovery. And I hung up the phone and I called Hazelton, is one of the oldest treatment centers in the country, and they're in Minnesota. And I called Hazelton up, and a lot of his problem was he was always dabbling into all kinds of uh, prescriptions,
Mm.
drugs from the doctor, and he was always on something. And so I called them and I said, listen, I want to send you this guy, but you got to promise me you don't give him any drugs at all, nothing. You gotta wing him off all this stuff, because he's on, you know, maybe 100 pills a day. We don't even know what this guy would be like without being medicated with all these different medications. So I said, you got to promise me. Anyway, we got him into Hazelton, and he ended up doing pretty good there and got out. But here I was, and it was it was wild. Here I was going to send him to the Bahamas for treatment. So you can get sucked into this real easy.
Yeah. Wow. That is wild. That is so crazy. Yeah. Well, that was good. I think we'll stop it right there. But yeah, I think the bottom line for this one is, look, those families are suffering too. They need help. They need a program. They need steps, and those are all available. And oftentimes people need a guide. I don't think any success it sounds like in this world is done alone. You got to have somebody there to help you out, and so Brenton certainly is one of those people that can help. So
Yeah, and Al-Anon's no different than AA. We push each other to the top. Al-Anon members, they give themselves freely, and they work with other Al-Anons, and they're available 24/7. And it's really a community that's very, very, very powerful once you tap into it.
mm,
And it's amazing. So there's a lot of things out there you can do.
that's
So
great.
don't give up.
That's right. Keep going.
Take care of
And
yourself.
that's right. Well, thanks, Brent. That was a good one. We'll wish everyone in podcast land a good day, a good night to wherever you're listening to this. Give us a quick review if you can, and then reach out to us, of course. If you have questions, if you'd like to get in touch with Brent, we'd love to hear from you. So we'll see you next time.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Push Each Other to the Top,
Brent's story is a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there's still a path forward and someone willing to walk it with us. If this episode meant something to you, share it. And if you're struggling right now, please know you're not alone. Follow the show wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss the next story. And if you can, leave a quick review. It helps more people find these conversations. New episodes drop soon. We hope you'll come back. Continue listening for behind the scenes moment after we ended the episode.
I have a lot of respect for people that can actually walk out and do those things that I ask them to do, because I understand how difficult it is. You're up against a mean monster.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got so much influence and power. It really hits hard, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so crazy. Yeah, it's just, man, I don't know how anybody gets through this life, without someone else helping them. There's just a lot of hard things going on in people's lives, and especially when those around them, loved ones are addicts. They're out of control, like you said. They're just in a whole nother world, and they're not the person that they fell in love with, probably. So,
Yeah.
man. I feel for these people. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Anyway.
I mean, obviously people are watching the podcast, and you know, if we put out things like this, it can actually really give people some, so we're helping people, and that's what we did this for. So,
There you go.
No,
it's just
not be thousands, but it's just a few. Heck, I feel pretty good about that.
That's awesome.